God just gave me this quick word here, so I don't know how long it'll be. Hopefully not too long, but because I'm trying to make dinner. But he was saying the devil is so mad. He's so mad. He's so mad. And I know I've said the devil is so mad in other past videos, but it's like every month for the last 6 months ish. The chosen ones have been going through extreme spiritual warfare. Just like I had prophesied in the past, I said it was going to be bad in October at Halloween, which it was. It was going to be bad at Christmas because we're celebrating Christ's birthday and because it was right at the cusp of the new year. And then it would be bad in January because we were in the new year now. People were making new resolutions. And then in March, which is coming up obviously just around the corner, it's going to, it also marks time because that's when the Hebrew New Year starts. And so of course it makes sense that the last 6 months have just been increasing month by month. And it's like, while the warfare has increased from September to October, October to November, November to December, December to January, etc., Satan's anger level has increased each month too, because he's been pulling out all the stops. He's been sending counterfeits your way. If you have a kingdom spouse, he's been sending counterfeits to them. He's been sending you attacks nonstop. He's been trying to send attacks at your children if you have children. He's been trying to send attacks at your family members. He's been trying to get your children and family members to go against you. He's been sending attacks at your jobs, trying to have coworkers go against you. Bosses look down on you like they don't favor you, etc. Struggles with finances. I could go on and on. Mental health attacks, spiritual health attacks, emotional health attacks, physical health attacks, trying to make you sick, if you can't. But here's the thing is that if this sounds right for you, you're heavily, heavily, heavily protected, like extremely protected. So therefore he will try to get at like your children. But if you're covering them, which you should be, then he'll try and go for your family members. And if you're covering them, which you should be, then he'll try to use your neighbors, right? And if you're covering them as you should be, like for me personally, I just cover every single person around me in my vicinity. Those I'm connected to, related to, I just cover every single person, because the devil has been seeking every month for who he can go after to use against you. And when you pass through the October test, the November test, the December test, the January test, etc., your anointing increases every single month and every test that you pass. And with that increase comes your spiritual wisdom, maturity, and awareness. So then as you grow, you know more of what to do. You picked up knowledge from the previous month and the month before that. And so it's another tool in your belt, so that by the time that we're here where we are now, February, March time, you have all your bases covered. So maybe in the past you had some loopholes, but you used November, December, January, February's attacks to cover up those foxholes and loopholes, right? And so Satan is so mad because the back doors he used in the past, you have shut every back door now one by one by one by one. And so he's completely out of foxholes to try and dig into, right? And so, yeah, so now there's no choice. He's got to kind of flee the scene, right? Because that's what Satan does. He likes to start a fire and blame somebody else. But when the blame isn't working, like if the blame is working where someone's believing that someone else started the fire, then he sits around and watches the action, right? Because he doesn't get any mud on him. But when he tries to do that, and it becomes clear through the power of the Lord, because the Lord is vindicating you. And so when the Lord is showing that no, you're not the one that started these fires, it comes back on him, and he can't have that. So therefore he just flees the scene and then leaves his puppets, the ones he's been puppeting, as in your enemies, the ones that Satan's been maneuvering through. They have to turn on each other and go against each other, because the Lord has vindicated you, so they know it's not you anymore. You can't take the false blame anymore, and the Lord has pulled you out of the mix. So therefore, like, picture it, the Lord is showing me a visual that picture there's one of your enemies on the one side and one of your enemies on the opposite side, and Satan is controlling both of them, whether they know it or not. They've been being controlled by Satan, whether intentionally or unintentionally. You were once upon a time in the middle, and they were flinging mud back and forth at each other. But with the intent to hit you, because then you're getting hit on the right and hit on the left. You're the middleman getting the maximum amount, right, thrown at you. But the Lord has, and the reason why is because the one enemy, Satan, confused and deluded the one enemy's mind to think that you were throwing it at them, but you weren't. Then he did the same and confused and deluded the other enemy's mind to think the same thing. So they both thought that you were the one that deserved the mud flung at you, because Satan manipulated them and made them believe that you were flinging at them, but you weren't. You were innocent. So the Lord has proven as such that you were not the mud flinger at all. You weren't involved. You were just an innocent party stuck in the middle. And the Lord has pulled you out of that middleman position. So what happens if that scenario is going on and the middleman gets pulled out? The mud's going to go from the right enemy to the left and the left enemy to the right. And so they're throwing it at each other now, right? That's a visual the Lord just gave me now to make it make more sense. So if this is fitting for you, that's what it is. And the Lord was telling me just before I made this video, he said, there's benefits to being a pioneer, but there's consequence too to being a pioneer. And he was referencing it to me like finding land, like how he made like Abraham like a pioneer, right? And blessed him and made him a forefather, right? But the Lord was trying to show to me that even founders and settlers who have found and discovered land hundreds and hundreds of years ago, like, Christopher Columbus, like discoverers and stuff, that one of the positives when you are a pioneer entering a new land is that you get kind of like the clout and glory to say, well, I was the first one to discover this land. But the negative, like the consequence, is that it's also on you because you're the first to get there, that you're the first to get attacked, say, right, by anything that may be on that land. Or if you're needing to settle there, like settle your family or your your other settlers that have came with you, your joiners, if you need to find food, you need to go looking for it. Like nothing is established in a new land, right? You're the first one there, so you don't know what you're walking into, you don't know how bad it is, nothing. But say if you take your time and set up shop and you establish base there, right, and then say 50 years go by and somebody else comes along, a whole new crew of people come to that same land, the negative for them is that the consequence to them is they can't say they discovered it first and that they were the first pioneer. However, they get the ease of having things set up already, of knowing where to go, like where they can eat from, where they can't, where is a safe boundary and where isn't, where a water source is, or like where, maybe some buildings are established, things like that. So I hope that makes sense. Like the Lord was telling, I knew what he meant perfectly, but what the Lord was trying to tell me is that pioneers that discovered new land, they had the glory cloud of saying that they discovered it first and being the first ones to mark the territory. But the downfall was that they had to go through all the legwork of setting things up. But that the people that came after them to that land, the people that came second to it, didn't get to say they reached that territory first, which was what they wanted. They wanted that notoriety and that clout and that attention and that claim to fame. They couldn't say that. But at least though, the positive is that things were already laid out for them. So they were able to access the same services and the same benefits that the pioneers had, simply because the pioneers paved the way, right? So the Lord is saying is that myself and you, if you're on this first, like if you're in the first fruit portion, you were a pioneer. You went there first. You embarked on uncharted, unknown territory, and you get to have the claim to fame of saying that you got to the land first. But the consequence or drawback to that was that you didn't know what you were getting into. There was no blueprint to go off of. You were the blueprint, and you had to go into uncharted territory, for one, and for two, you created the blueprint for others. So this matters because when it comes, if everything I'm saying resonates with you, like it is with me, your enemies, one of the things that Satan got into their minds was they knew that you had something in you that they didn't have. You were going somewhere that they weren't going. You were going to get there first. You were never racing them, but they were racing you. Because Satan, unbeknownst to you, you didn't know this because you didn't get it, but Satan put it on them, this knowledge of knowing, whether it was through him directly or their tarot cards or whatever, that you were going to reach this new, untapped, uncharted land before they were. And I mean, okay, so what? Who cares, right? But to them, that's what sparked the competition, was that they wanted to be the first ones to get married. They wanted to be the first ones to receive the blessing. They wanted to be the first ones to say, hey, I got to this land first. They wanted to be the first ones to discover the anointing and the gifts that they had. You know what I'm saying? They wanted to be the first ones, like Neil Armstrong going to the moon. They wanted to be the first one saying, I was the first one to the moon. But it doesn't really matter. Like, I would feel much more safer traveling to the moon today in 2024 than I would have in the 60s when Neil Armstrong went. Right? Because now the fact that, but imagine he was probably excited that he got to be first. However, on the other hand, he was probably more so scared and nervous because no one had done it before and he didn't know what it all entailed, right? What that looked like. But now today, because he went and he did it, he now can come back and say, this is how you do it. This is the best way. This is what it was like. Watch out for this. Watch out for that, And so the Lord is saying is that, like, just as an example, you're like a Neil Armstrong making it to the moon the first go round. You're the pioneer, the first fruit to do it. Now, obviously, we don't mean that, but we mean the spiritual land, right? And your enemies wanted, Satan put it on them to be like, no, I want to be the first one to the moon. I want to be the first one to say that I got there. But you didn't realize this because you didn't know there was ever a race or a competition to begin with, because you were never competing. But irregardless, Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon, and you were the first one pioneer to this land. You've already got there. You've made it. It's yours. You've stuck your flag and you've claimed it already. So now the Lord is bringing your enemies, those who've been going against you, not all of them, but some of them. The reason that they were reaching for your coattails in the first place, like grasping at your coattails, riding them, so they say, was because they're on a journey too. So you didn't know you were on a journey until you figured out you were on a journey. Well, your enemies that were chasing after you, they were on a journey as well. You both were journeying for this land, this spiritual land that you were pioneering and making it to first. You had a head start. The reason there was so much heat on you in competition, they were just so going hard, was because Satan was lighting a fire under them to go after you, making up this non-existent, fraudulent race that wasn't even a thing at all. And even though Satan had this going, it didn't change anything. You were still going to be first. Even if someone came along, say Neil Armstrong is planning his moon visit, right? And he'd been planning it for a year and he's leaving in 2 days. Someone could have came along and said, I'm going to the moon. Neil Armstrong was already geared up and saddled up and ready to go. Like, it was too late for them to make the first journey, the first leg of the journey. He was already on his way. He's like, well, I'm heading there in 2 days. You can go next year after, the shuttle gets back or whatever, right? I don't know, but you know what I mean? It wasn't going to change the terms of what had already been established. The Lord knew what Satan was doing, whether you did or not. The Lord knew it, and it wasn't going to change that you were ahead of schedule. You were already on your way there. You were already ahead. You were already the pioneer position, right? So the positive in that is that, yes, you get to say that you were the first one to get on the bus, so to speak, right? But the drawback to that was that you're the one that had to go through the most intensity, because you had to carve the way and pave the way for the others coming up behind you, running up behind you, if that makes sense. So you're already, some of you are in the land, some of you are on your way to the land, but the ship has already sailed, right? It sailed back in January. So that's why your enemies have been going so hard the last 2 months, is because they're mad that they didn't catch the ship, that the ship left without them. But it was always intended for the ship to leave without them. But they're lucky that the ship left without them, because they couldn't hack going through what you went through to get there. Like I was just saying, what the pioneer has to go through is a lot more compared to the someone that's up and coming after things have been established, right? So now you've went ahead, you've got there, you've set up camp, so to speak, and now your enemies are starting the very same journey leg that you were once upon a time on. So things are not going to go easier for them in one way because they sinned more than you. They have more contention with God than you did, right? Because of all the things they did against you and how wicked and impure their hearts are. But the Lord is going to take them through a journey, maybe not identical, but a journey like yours, a journey to their own salvation and their own deliverance. The journey you had to do and you went through, now the journey they need to do. Luckily for them, you created a blueprint, a path, a map for them to follow. Yes, thank you, Lord. You made a map. When you went on your journey, you didn't have a map. The Lord was your map. He was the compass, he was the map, he was the GPS. You had no coordinates. But while you were on this journey going uncharted, the Lord was merciful enough to your enemies that one of the reasons they followed you so closely was because the Lord allowed it for their own mercy and grace, so that now they have kind of an idea of what way to go. A map was drawn out to them throughout this time. They studied you, as we know, the gang stalking. They studied you, and yes, the Lord could have shut it down, but he allowed it in one sort of a way, because he was allowing your enemy to have a map, a GPS, a blueprint, a compass laid out for them that you didn't have. Because if they aren't as spiritually strong, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as you are. So therefore they couldn't have done the journey uncharted like you did. They couldn't have pioneered even if they wanted to. They weren't equipped. But you were, because the Lord was being like the North Star guiding you, right? And so you had to rely on old style spiritual things, like biblical things, like the sun and the moon and the stars, like the things that shepherds and stuff would have had to use back then. That's the stuff that the Lord was kind of taking you through. It was like a raw, rugged kind of a way of figuring out your bearings, right? And that's why lots of times you felt kind of lost and stuck, is because imagine having to rely in 2023, 2024 on navigational systems from 2,000 years ago, right? But you found your way there, glory to the Lord, and you laid a breadcrumb trail along the way, a map, so to speak, that the enemy was closely on your heels trying to follow. Now, hopefully they were paying attention instead of just trying to race you the whole time, because the Lord did that for their benefit. He gave them an extra support that you didn't have, right? Originally. So unfortunately for your enemies, they don't get the clout and glory of saying, I got there first. That notoriety goes to you, but you had to go through a heck of a lot of hills and valleys and, dark shadows and turns and twists to get there. Did you not? But you laid a map out, a blueprint that was given as I don't know what you call it, just out of grace, I guess, to your enemy, that the Lord allowed to happen. So that's why they were following you the whole time. And now they're mad. They're mad because they didn't arrive there first, and that you get to say that and you arrived before they did. But they should be grateful that you took one for the team, and you took the hard hits and the hard road to plow it in anticipation, in beginning, so that they could come along after and just go, oh, there's the trail. Oh, I turn here, I turn there. Okay, I remember when I was stalking them, this happened to them. So now it's happening to me. Oh, I know what to do. Like, you know what I mean? Everything was rogue for you, and you had to just kind of like figure it out, right? But the Lord knew they couldn't keep up with your pace. So therefore he was merciful enough to give gave them an advantage of having, a blueprint to follow on the second round, like a map. Imagine trying to go somewhere and there's no map, there's no GPS. You'd be saying, well, how do I get there? And I'm telling you, we'll just follow the sun and the moon and the stars and the Lord. And you'd be like, okay, how long till you get lost, right? How long till you get frustrated, right? That was kind of your journey. And so they're mad at this time because they don't get to have that clout, and that doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother you that you do and they don't, or they do and you don't, you weren't ever there, right? Because you have a pure heart. At this time, they don't. They're as in the world as you once were, but worse. So they now need to go through. So if you've been journeying for 1, 2, 3 years, they're going to need to journey for 2, 3, 4 years. And they're going to go through similar circumstances that you went through. They're going to have some advantages that you didn't have, because they're going to have your breadcrumb trail to follow. But they're going to have some disadvantages because they're under a lot of extra judgment that they put upon themselves that you didn't have when you were navigating the uncharted territory, if that makes sense. So don't think it's strange if the enemy is mad at you or going against you at this time, because the enemy is mad that, oh, sorry, I'm just going to plug in my phone. Just a second. The enemy is mad because they didn't get to get there first, be the first in line, right? And that shouldn't matter to them. They have so much bigger fish to fry than that. But that was from Satan trying to put it on them, because if he could get them racing you, there was a chance you were going to stop or get winded or take a long rest or turn around or something like that, right? It was basically God knew and Satan knew that you were going to get to the destination first. So one of the biggest intentions was to try to thwart you, stop you, get you discombobulated, things like that, so that you lost your way, so that you gave up, you got tired, exhausted, things like that. But like I said, the Lord told me back in January that the lots had been cast, so it had already been determined that you were on your way forward towards the land, and that you were going to be the first one there, the first pioneer, and that they were going to come secondary, and that no matter what they may try and do, their plan is not going to abort the mission. This was a mission that was predetermined from all the way back before you were even born. So there was nothing that was going to intercept or intervene in the Lord's plan that was already created and established before you even knew what was going on with you, right? And so there's that. Then the second thing I wanted to say is, I want to clarify, because the Lord was telling me this as well yesterday, is like he wanted me to make a clarification statement on my next video. So I want to clarify that I in no way have any hatred, ill will, bitterness, unforgiveness, frustration, anything for my enemies and those who have opposed me and gone against me. For one, I pray for mine every night, and I have for like over a year now, right? And secondly, I'm humbled to the point that I get it. Like, I was in the world, so why would I judge someone that's in the world? I was stuck in sin cycles, so why would I judge someone that's in sin cycles? And for you, it's the same, like, chosen one, if this is resonating with you. One of the other reasons why the Lord let you go first, or had this laid out too, was because he knew that you would be able to teach eventually, right? And so I'm not going to get into other channels right now, but there are other channels that I follow that maybe don't put out the same words I give, because the Lord has told me that he'll give similar word. Like, I'll get a word and I'll hear on a channel that someone else got the same word. He'll give the same word out. So if like the enemy's attacking us through magic or black magic or witchcraft, he's going to put that out to multiple prophets so that they can warn those that don't receive prophecy, right? That don't have prophetic gift at this time. So think it not strange if like myself and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 others are saying similar messages. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's copying everybody. And don't get me wrong, some people do that. They do listen in and copy other people's content. But I'm just saying, just because you hear the same message multiple times on multiple channels doesn't mean all those people copied each other. The Lord will put out messages, to the masses, because I don't have that many subscribers, right? So if I put out a message about it and only 5 people check out my video. What about all the thousands of people that need to get that message, right? So he's going to give it to this one and this one and that one, so that between myself and all this 10 other channels, we can reach thousands of people. Because the Lord knows who's genuinely on the journey, who's genuinely chosen and needs the information, and who is a monitoring spirit sent from Satan. And they actually they don't serve any purpose other than intentionally trying to mess you up. So, he knows what he's doing. He's strategic that way, right? So I don't personally harbor, so anyone that may come across not all my videos, but some of my videos, every single message I put on my channel is given to me from the Lord, period. I don't do anything otherwise to get a message from any other source, right? All my messages come directly from the Lord. Now you have to remember, the way the Lord speaks to me may not be how he speaks to you, or speaks to so-and-so or so-and-so or so-and-so, right? The Lord has led me to multiple prophetic channels, and I know they're genuine and authentic, and sometimes they do take the words right out of my mouth and vice versa, but they don't get the same wording and messaging from the Lord that I do, and vice versa, right? We get it. We do our delivery in different ways. And so just because some of my messages may be a little rough around the edges and a little bit blunt and straightforward, that's just me as a person, and that's how the Lord wants me to speak. That's how he's gifted me to be, right? So just because I speak like that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm throwing shade, I'm judging, I'm being hate and all this other stuff, right? It's just how the Lord has asked me to deliver it. Those are the words he gave me, right? So the Lord wanted me to put just like a little disclaimer out and say that, just for clarification purposes, I don't hate on people or my enemy or this, that, and the third. I'm not trying to judge. I apologize if it comes off like that. Take it with a grain of salt. It's not me, it's how the Lord is speaking, right? And we know in the Bible there was multiple different characters with multiple anointings, with multiple situations, multiple prophets. Everyone had their own unique twist on whatever mission it was that God had them representing in the Bible, right? So not like Job's situation was different than Joseph's, and Joseph's was different than Esther's, So it's the same thing with the Lord's vessels, is they're not going to be a cookie cutter carbon copy of each other. They're going to have their own ways of delivering and behaving, right? So the Lord just wanted me to make mention of that as well. So anyways, I got to go make dinner, and I hear the kids acting up. So I'm going to cut this short now. I'll be back again with another one soon enough, I believe, because the Lord's already putting a new word together for me to deliver. I hope this makes sense. I hope it comes across the right ones. I hope it blesses you and finds you well, and God bless.